Chapter 17 of Under Boy Scout Colors by Joseph Bushnell Ames. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 17 Dale's Chance. To Tompkins, watching with bated breath and clenched fists, it seemed as if the ball would never drop. Two of the fielders were running swiftly backward, but there wasn't a chance in 100 of their catching it. Bat flung aside and toe clips digging into the ground, Blake was speeding toward first. Before the ball hit the turf, he had rounded the sack. By the time Pete Oliver had recovered it and lined it in, the runner was panting on second. "Got him going! Got him going!" shrieked Connors delightedly. "Get after it, Peanut! Smash it on the nose, and bring in Blakey!" His teammates added their jubilations to his, and a bedlam of shrill advice, mingled with fresh joshing, ensued. Ranny's eyes flashed with ill-concealed anger, and he gripped his under lip tight between his teeth. His first ball was good, but the batter fell on the second with all his might. Crack! A gasp went up from the watchers on the bench. Smack! The gasp merged into a yell of delight as the ball landed squarely in Frank Sanson's mitt and stuck there. The force of the impact nearly upset the shortstop, but he recovered swiftly and lined the horsehide straight into the outstretched hands of Court Parker astride of third. There was a flashing downward motion of those hands, and the sliding runner was tagged, his fingers not 6 inches from the sack. To the shout of delight that went up, Dale Tompkins contributed rather more than his share. Leaping and capering in front of the bench, it seemed as if he couldn't express his overwhelming relief at the unexpected ending of the inning and their escape from a dangerous situation. He thumped Sanson on the back and poked Court in the ribs joyously. But when the first excited enthusiasm had passed, he began to think of the inning yet to be played, and to wonder how Ranny would get through it. Surely there was time to pull himself together, the boy thought. He hadn't really lost control of himself except for a moment. With the opening of the ninth, it looked as if Tompkins was right. Troop 5 had failed to score further, but Ranny entered the box apparently as cool and self-contained as he had been at the beginning of the game. Quietly and efficiently he took the first batter in hand, and in spite of the joshing that at once began on the other side, he lured the boy into popping up a little infield fly that was easily smothered by the second baseman. The next fellow up, however, sent out a long fly to right field, which Blair unaccountably muffed. Instantly the shrill, nagging voice of Red Connors pierced the din. "Up in a balloon!" he yelled. "Little Lammy's ready for the stable. He's done. I knew he couldn't stand up before a regular team once we got his number." Irritating as a mosquito's buzz, the strident voice rasped Dale Tompkins' spirit like a file, and a rush of sympathy for the pitcher swept over him. He knew how annoying it is to be blamed for another's fault, and the error was distinctly Blair's for muffing that fly. If only Phelps wouldn't pay any attention to the nagging. He had only to put out 2 more men and win the game. Surely he must realize that the fellows didn't mean anything they said, that they were only trying. He caught his breath with a swift, anxious intake as the ball left Ranny's fingers, and an instant later went sailing over the infield. It was a clean hit, and brought forth a roar of delight from Troop 1's adherents, who had once redoubled their efforts to tease the angry pitcher. It wasn't baseball in its better sense, nor did it show the real scout spirit, but it was human nature. Seeing the game slipping from them, they took the only way they had been able to discover to turn the tables. Ranny, plainly furious, pitched hastily to the next batter and hit him in the arm. The bases were filled, with only one out. "They've rattled him all right," said the regretful voice of Paul Trexler at Tompkins' elbow. "Great Scott, he can't be going to stick it out." For a moment it looked that way. Flushed and furious, his snapping eyes sweeping the circle of grinning faces, Ranny stood motionless for a moment or two in the middle of the diamond. He even toed the slab and took a signal from Ted McIlvaine. Then, of a sudden, his arm dropped to his side, and he stalked across the infield toward the bench. By the time he reached it, his face was white, save where the grip of teeth had left little crimson dents in his underlip. His level, almost hostile glance fixed Dale Tompkins coldly. "Go in, Tompkins," he said curtly, and tossed him the ball. Dale caught it instinctively, and scrambling to his feet pulled off his sweater mechanically. His chance had come, but somehow he did not want it now. He would infinitely rather have had Ranny keep his head and his control and finish the game he had started off so well. The hurt and shame in that white face smote on him with a sense of physical pain, made him feel in a curious involved fashion as if he were in some manner responsible for the humiliation of his hero. A moment later all this vanished from his mind as he crossed the diamond, his heart beating unevenly, every sense concentrated in the task before him. He was greeted by a burst of joshing from Connor and the others, but he scarcely heard it. Quite without self-consciousness as he was, the remarks of the crowd, with most of whom he was on friendly terms, meant nothing to him. It was merely an obvious attempt to rattle him, to which he paid no heed. So intent was he on gauging the boy who stood, bat in hand, a little to one side of the plate. Tompkins had warmed up a little before the game, and now, after throwing a few to McIlvaine, he found the plate and nodded to the batter to resume his place. All the afternoon he had been sizing up the different batters, noting as well as he could the strength and weakness of each one. He thought he knew the sort of ball Jack Dillon could not hit safely, and promptly proceeded to send it up. In that very instant something in the fellow's face told him that he had blundered. His heart leaped with the crack of leather meeting wood. He caught his breath almost with a sob as the ball whizzed past his vainly reaching arm. There was no answering thud behind him. Bob Gibson had missed. Heartsick, he saw the runner shoot down from third and cross the plate. Close at his heels, it seemed, the fellow behind him rounded the sack and started home. Suddenly he doubled back, and Dale realized with a gasp of thankfulness that Gardner had nipped that second run with a fine throw to the plate from center field. He was trembling a bit as he caught the ball from McIlvaine and moved slowly backward, turning it nervously in his hands. There was a sick, sinking sensation in the pit of his stomach. All about him the opposition were yelling joyously, as if it were only a question of minutes before the game could be counted theirs. "Another easy mark!" shrilled Connors. "We got him going, too. One good single, Irish, and we take the lead. Come over here, Blakey, and coach. I'm up next." Dale brought his teeth down hard, and his jaw squared. He'd show Red Connors who was easy. Stepping into the box, he met the confident grin of Roddy Thorpe. This time there could be no mistake. He knew Roddy's game through and through. His eyes dropped to where McIlvaine crouched, giving a signal from behind his mitt. He shook his head slightly, and Bob, with some reluctance, changed the signal for another. Dale pitched suddenly, and Thorpe, swinging with all his might to meet the sort of ball he thought was coming, missed with ludicrous dismay. He fouled the second one, and then let two go by. Finally he missed again, fooled by a sudden change of pace and a slow ball when he expected speed. A cheer went up from his teammates that still further heartened Tompkins. "Who's an easy mark now, Red?" taunted Frank Sanson, pounding his glove delightedly. "Here's where you get yours, too." "I should worry," retorted Connors, dancing to the plate with every sign of confidence. "That's only a fluke. It won't last." Dale's eyes narrowed a bit as he surveyed the grinning, freckled face before him. Ordinarily he and Red were on good enough terms, but at this moment he felt a slow, smoldering anger against the fellow who, he felt, had been the main cause of forcing Ranny out of the box. "Here's where I even up," he muttered. He took Bob's signal, and promptly, yet without apparent haste, he pitched. The ball left his fingers and whistled over with a slight inswerve. Connor swung his bat fiercely, but encountered nothing but empty air. "One," muttered Tompkins under his breath. "Two more now, just two more." The next was a ball, and Connors let it pass. Then came a slow one delivered with a swing and snap that fooled the batter into striking before it was well within his reach. As he regained his balance, he scowled slightly and shook his head. The grin still stretched his lips, but it had turned into a grimace. Dale's heart began to pound. Over and over again he was saying to himself, "One more, only one more. I must get him. I've got to." Silence had fallen on the field. The batter's teammates had left off their jibing. It seemed as if every fellow gathered about the edges of the diamond was holding his breath. Dale's right hand drew back slowly, and for an instant he cuddled the ball under his chin. Then, like a flash, his arm shot forward and a gray shadow whizzed through the air. The ball was high, too high, many a breathless onlooker thought at first, but suddenly it flashed downward across Connor's shoulders. Too late the batter saw it drop and brought his bat around. There was a swish, a thud, and the umpire's voice was drowned in the shrill yell of relaxing tension that split the throats of the victorious team as they made a rush for Tompkins, standing in the middle of the diamond. Sanson and Bob Gibson reached him first, but the others were not far behind. Thumping, pounding, poking him in the ribs, and executing around him an impromptu war dance, they swept Dale toward the bench, jabbering excitedly the while. In a happy sort of daze, the boy heard the hearty congratulations of Mr. Curtis. Then, when the throng had spread out a little, he suddenly found himself face to face with Ranley Phelps. For a second there was an embarrassed silence. Then the blond chap put out his hand. "You did mighty well, Tompkins," he said, with a touch of constraint in his manner. "I wish," he paused an instant, and a faint color crept into his face. "I'd just like you to know," he went on rapidly, "that I haven't kept you out of the box all season because of wanting to take all the pitching myself. I didn't think you'd make good. I was wrong, of course. I'm sorry it's too late to prove it to you." That was all. Without waiting for a reply, he turned away. But Dale's face glowed. Somehow, those brief words from Ranley meant more to him than the exuberant congratulations of all the others. End of chapter 17.